begun. 2, 3, 4, 5. Now I'm switching manually to the auto scene switcher, which will give me 40 seconds to get over to the chair. And you can theoretically, and you should be able to grab it now, which I will do once I sit down in that chair before they see me like I'm smooth. You might want to turn your volume down.
Oh yeah, good point.
I have to get into that myself. Adjust everything. Good afternoon, everybody. I sent out a little bit of a mass email this morning to about 40 or 50 friends and family, and guess what I left out? The time. But then I actually thought that was cool, because if anybody was really good, it was a feedback trick. Like, if anybody really cared, they would have emailed me and said, "Hey, John, you left out the time," because I've had that happen before, and they'd say, "What time is it?" In fact, let me double check my email and make sure I didn't get one of those. Nope, I didn't. Well, of course, and we knew this.
Yeah,
It's
a Friday, middle of a Friday.
Middle of the day,
Yep.
and we're doing this live because we can, and it helps me promote my theater.
Yeah, absolutely.
And my studio. But we know that the life, the way it's being lived in this modern
People are at
era,
work.
is that people will do what? On demand.
Yep.
When they're ready to watch it,
Yep.
they'll watch it. Good afternoon, everybody. It is Friday, September 27th. I'm sitting here with the very lovely Karyssa Dow, who I've just met formally and in person. And we are here at the Mount Angel Theater Studio at 220 East Charles, downtown, beautiful downtown Mount Angel, Oregon. Look it all up. It's got some history and some cool things going on here, at least occasionally, and quite a bit of culture up there on the Abbey Hill, and now down here in the illustrious, now my illustrious Mount Angel Theater Studio. And you can watch some of my previous videos and live streams about what is the Mount Angel Theater Studio, but just suffice it to say that it was a silent movie house in 1912 that's led a wild, traverse pathway of a life that ultimately my friend Stu Rasmussen, the now deceased mayor of Silverton, somewhat illustrious himself, purchased in 1980 and converted from what had been at that point a real movie theater with sound and everything in the 70s. For some reason it got closed down in the 70s, and so by the time he bought it in 80, it had been closed for a little while, so he probably got a pretty good price on it. And but he converted it to this theater space and studio space. So I'm just calling it what it is, factual data and objective information. So forgive me, I will do a little housekeeping along the way. For those of you who have watched me before, you understand that this is a one-man operation, trying to be at the most sophisticated level without the most modern equipment, however, in a very functional space, if you apply the noggin. So, that being said, welcome to the Mount Angel Theater Studio.
Thank you.
We were talking a moment ago about the fact that Scott Stokley, the local proprietor of Lou's Kitchen under the Glockenspiel, that's kind of what I call it. I'm not sure what he calls it at this point, who's got a very good business over there with a nice menu and some quality food, I might add.
Little commercial.
Hooked us up. And he sent an email to both of us suggesting to me that you were looking for a place for a meet and greet in town, because you've decided, how long ago did you decide this?
The end of July.
This year.
This year.
Now about, that's what, like
6 weeks?
So I was going to say, I was
7
gonna
weeks,
give you
maybe?
the benefit of the doubt, say 2 months ago. A couple of months ago, to run for our Oregon House of Representatives District 18, which I believe we're sitting in
Yep.
right now.
Absolutely.
Is where my home is in Markham. That's yeah.
It extends all the way up to Malala.
And over to Scotts Mills, Sawtell.
And all the over I-5 to St. Paul.
Okay.
It's a big district.
How many people does each one of those districts?
Ours has 51,000 registered voters. I don't know the population total off the top of my head, but we have just over 51,000 registered voters.
So that must be the guide. That's how they
so.
Gerrymander those districts, is they try to get the same number of people.
Similar population
That's
sizes.
why the ones in Eastern Oregon are so large.
Yes.
Because it takes them a lot of area to get enough people.
And that's kind of the same thing why ours is so big.
Such an interesting state. Now, I read that you grew up nearby, but not in Oregon.
Not in Oregon. I'm actually from southeastern Washington. I'm from Walla Walla, where the onions grow.
And there was a college or two. Is there a college there?
In Walla Walla, there's Whitman College, Walla Walla University, and then they actually have a pretty prestigious community college nursing program, and because it's the Walla Walla Valley where there's so much wine, they've got a pretty strong vintner program too.
And how's the rainfall doing over there, though? I know it doesn't get as
it's
much
not great.
as the Willamette Valley.
It's not great. It's definitely a desert.
Yeah. But, well, they must be pulling a lot of that water for the vines.
They actually, as far as I understand, they don't grow a huge amount of the grapes in Walla Walla Valley because of the harsh weather, because it can be really hot in the summer and also really cold in the winter. So I think a lot of the grapes are imported, and then they make the wine. They make the wine in Walla Walla, but I don't think that many. I think there are some like large vineyards, but not enough to support the like 200 or 300 wineries that are there.
Incredible.
They have a large. Most of the agriculture there is wheat and onions. Onions, obviously.
And you lived your whole life there?
Yeah, until I was 20 when we moved here.
Nice.
Born and raised.
And was there a compelling reason to move to Oregon besides the green change?
My mom lived here my whole life. I grew up with my dad in Walla Walla, and my husband re-signed up for the Army Reserves, and we were supposed to move to Texas. And we had a 1-year-old, and we drove all the way to Texas, and there was a huge snafu, and they sent us back the next day. So we didn't have jobs, we didn't have anywhere to live, and we'd always wanted to move to this other state because there's just so much more to do, especially because we had a 1-year-old. We love the beach, and so we were going to start over whether we went back to Walla Walla or we stayed here. And we had relatives in both places. My husband's uncle actually lives in Malino, which is also part of our district.
Did you spend much time around here as a kid?
Summers and then every other holiday.
Nice.
Or every other Thanksgiving, Christmas kind of thing.
Wow, you had the best of both climate conditions that exist in the Pacific Northwest.
So yeah, we just decided to stop here.
Does the river go through Walla Walla, the Snake, or the Columbia?
No, the Snake kind of skirts it. There's actually
a Walla Walla River?
There is. My dad and my grandma own property that have water rights into the Walla Walla River.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yep.
And interesting. I come from Southern California, so I'm rather sensitive to the whole water situation.
It's the Walla Walla River, but most of the year it's more like the Walla Walla Creek. It gets pretty low and pretty dry for a good portion of the year.
Have you heard of the L.A. River?
Is that the one that's all concrete?
Well, there's sections of it that are all concrete, and then there's also appendages to it that are all concrete. But originally it was not concrete, and originally it was quite a river.
Was it?
But of course now it's what we call, as I grew up in the San Fernando Valley, a wash. Okay. Which is another term, I suppose, for a big gutter until mankind gets it together to take care of, all of the things that feed into it and everything. Well, how interesting. Now, occasionally I'm going to do a little aside and just a little bit of, housework, homework, because what I wanted to say is, we might do this again. Okay. How many days do we have?
43, 42.
Okay. And so what I like this to be is not too oppressive for anybody, informative, and at this point, since it's the first one and the first time, it's really a lot about an introduction, which I think is totally appropriate and relevant. That's why I did about 8 or 9 of them solo here, as I told you. I was introducing myself, the theater, Stu, and John Simpkins, my illustrious artist friend and
I love it. It's
painter.
Beautiful.
The name of this painting is called Chaya, And if you look closely, you'll notice that the artist of Chaya, my friend John, is on the back of Chaya. You see him? You see him?
Yep.
So it's a wonderful painting that I've chosen to make as a staple of my podcasts,
Yeah.
webcasts, live streams, whatever you want to call them, talk shows. Someday maybe we'll have an orchestra over here. And that could be in my dreams anyways. And but the painting is like an orchestra in my mind.
Yeah, I love
And
it.
so I love having it there to remind me occasionally that all of this and a lot of human interaction should be about inspiration and positive connection at the bare minimum. And so that's why I'm doing this. And so I love the fact that you're my first politician guest. Do you even think of yourself as a politician yet?
No, and I'm terrible at like public speaking.
But you've been doing it. You dove in.
I'm trying.
You
I'm trying
dove
my
in.
best.
So you have a local salon, is that correct?
Yep, I own Opaline Salon in Silverton, and
What's
I
it
actually
called?
Opaline.
And where is it?
We just relocated at the beginning of the year to 304 North First Street, which is right next to the Pillbox. It used to be the medical supply, Foothills Medical Supply. They closed about a year ago, although I still have people come in at least once a week for the medical supply.
Still.
Yes, still.
And you do hair and nails?
Hair,
and
nails.
facials
I don't do facials, but I do waxing. But I am fully licensed.
Okay. And so let's go back all the way to July again. And you began to tell me just as we were starting the podcast.
Yeah.
That you just realized
I woke up.
one else, this gentleman, Rick Lewis, who I've met briefly once or twice.
I've met him once.
And by the way, I was at the Capitol, you should know this, what's today? On Monday, I think I was at the Capitol with my illustrious board and friends from the Oregon Substitute Teacher Association. We were following up on a couple of commissions that they were reporting on. And we visited a few, did a little bit of lightweight PR lobbying, I would say. And I did stop by Rick Lewis's office and gave his secretary, or excuse me, his assistant. He had a couple there. I don't remember what kind of assistant that was. The pitch and the spiel that I was going to do this with you, and I don't have the FCC on my back because I'm not a real TV station using the open airwaves, so I can do what I want. I don't have to invite him, but I did invite him.
Good.
And in fact, gee whiz, if he ever does respond to me in a favorable or a positive fashion in any regard, which I don't know, what do you think? Would we put money on it? Should we say 50-50? What do we think?
I mean, I've only met him once. I have no idea.
Maybe we can actually host a debate.
I would love to meet him more officially.
That would be wild, wouldn't it? Anyways, I'm always thinking about inventing things that have not existed, and certainly that has not existed anywhere in this here ye-here-old territory. Where we might be actually able to broadcast a little homemade apple pie friendly political discussion and debate in the humble Mount Angel Theater studio. Wow, what a wild concept. By the way, I need to do one more thing because, again, as I told you, yep, that was a mini panic attack.
That it was actually on.
Yeah, and I want to make sure. Because, right, if I was sitting over there, I could monitor everything, and I would know. You see those little green lights going when I talk like that?
Yeah.
So we know that the audio is working, but we can't see that. I should turn the screen around so that we could see that it's actually working, but it's all right. I'm trusting the technology. That's a whole other podcast and or a series that I want to start. And I'm not exactly sure what to name it, but it's about my resentment towards the software engineers, okay? Don't take that personally, gentlemen. I know a number of you personally, and I've worked for many of you for a very long period of time. But you've taken over the world, and I'm not so sure I like it the way that you made it. Selling those panaceas to every doctor's office, every insurance agent, every attorney's office, every organization, imagining that people were really getting something great because it was going to be computerized, you know. All right, I won't go too far. So, so you were sitting around the kitchen table with the now 4-year-old?
She's 13.
13-year-old. And your husband in July, and you're reading the paper.
No, I got an email that the person who had ran as a write-in for the primary race decided to step down, and that the party was looking for somebody, the Democratic Party was looking for somebody to apply from within and appoint from within. And I talked to my husband about it, and he was fully supportive. I really thought he might say, when are you going to have time? But he was gung-ho all the way, and my daughter thinks it's really cool. And so I put my application in, but I really thought somebody else would too that had experience.
Was that Mike Ashland who bowed out?
No, Mike Ashland's running for State Senate District 9, which is House District 18 and 17 against Fred Gerard.
I'm glad I covered that.
Yeah.
Okay, because I know Mike and I think highly of him. Yeah. So
I don't know who was running, who the primary person. I can't remember.
And this was an email request to you, or just a notification?
And not just specifically to me. It came from the Democratic Party of Oregon to county level, and then the county level people dispersed it to their personal email list.
How long have you been paying attention to our governance?
Oh, I have. I watch and I keep tabs on it pretty regularly, and I thought about running for state representative. But I wanted to wait till my daughter was older, more self-sufficient than she is at 13. But this sort of just presented itself, and with the current state of the national race, and we know more people vote during the presidential year, I figured it would be a waste to not at least run somebody. Didn't actually think it was going to be me. That was a big surprise. I really thought somebody else would put their name in.
Oh my God, you could end up in... dare I say it, the Trump position, being the surprise winner of something. Wouldn't that be phenomenal? A phenomenal advent and happening. Who knows?
But I just truly, fundamentally don't believe that anybody should run unopposed.
And what did you have to do? Can you share a little bit with us what you had to do to become viable as a candidate? And you're going to be on the ballot for sure?
On the ballot in the voter's pamphlet. I filled out the application, and then the Democratic Party of Oregon, because I was the only person, they did a vote on via Zoom of the precinct committee people in Marion and Clackamas County via Zoom. If it had been me and somebody else or multiple candidates, then they would have had to actually get together physically, but they were able to do it.
The Democratic Party?
Yes.
Okay, locally.
The Zoom appointee or appointment was ran by a representative from the Democratic Party of Oregon at the state level, but it was county level precinct committee people that
Were you
appointed.
on the call? Did they ask you questions? Yeah. Was it hard?
No. I mean, it still makes me nervous. I don't always love talking about myself, but most of the people were super friendly.
Well, what I have to say right now is, I'm a teacher. I'm the vice president of the Oregon Substitute Teacher Association. I sub in like 5 different districts, all of which are a little bit different. Mm-hmm. And so I'm loving the education that you're giving right now as just, a regular citizen who decided, which is where every politician started
somewhere, yeah, right.
And so the fact that we're getting it from an actual
and it's
recent adoptee.
It's something that any of the major parties can do. If the person that runs in the primary becomes incapable of running in the general election, then the party is able to have people apply from within and then appoint.
Since then, have you been able to participate in any of the party functions that might have gone on in August or September?
No, but that is partially just due to the fact that I still work full time.
Okay.
I'm in the salon 5 days a week.
Are you in the loop? Are they sending you stuff?
Yeah, I've actually Janelle Bynum's campaign's actually been really, really, really helpful.
Excellent.
They've included me when they canvass in our district. They include me when they're doing their recording.
And this is in her district. Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So they've been super helpful. And I mean, as far as anything, I have a lot of people that are volunteering, that are on my side, helping me out.
Nice.
And the Marion County and the Clackamas County Democrats have also been really, really helpful.
Excellent. So you filled in the paperwork. You went through a little informal meeting with the DNC, I guess
DPO.
DPO,
Yeah.
Democratic
Party of Oregon.
Party of Oregon. Love those acronyms. Why don't we feel special? I'm so sick to death of acronyms. I could, we're allowed to express ourselves here. I'm sure we have a very small audience. In fact, let's pause and check that. See if we have even one watching.
My husband might be. I got a text from him.
It looks like there's at least one watching. Now, I don't know how to refresh this without...
Oh, no. He sent me a picture of our cats laying on laundry.
So, well, that is so cool. And I have to both commend you for the bravery and courage that you're exhibiting.
Thank you.
And congratulate you for walking through all of that. I mean, it's still bureaucracy to manifest. Now, how much time this is a good one. Coming from a new lobbyist, I might add. Actually, kind of an old lobbyist. I was taking the cheetah pictures down there years ago. I was lobbying for cheetahs in Oregon. Ask me about that later. Have you spent much time in Salem?
You mean like at the Capitol? I have not. I would love to spend more time, but currently working 5-6 days a week sometimes in the salon. I don't have a lot of extra time. My daughter plays 2 sports right now. And
so should you win, remind me, what does that schedule look like? And is it paid or not paid?
It is paid. They make $35,000, a little bit over $35,000 a year. And then while you're in session, it's 100.
How many months out of the year?
It might be the odd. They're different. So 1 year it's
House,
6 weeks.
Senate?
No,
They're
just
both
let it
at the same time.
I think so.
Okay.
At least for the House, 1 year it's 6 weeks, and the other year I think it's 170 days. So about half the year. But I have a job where
6 weeks or 6 months?
6 weeks.
Okay.
So there's short session and there's long session.
Oh, I
and
see.
I can't remember if it's which one it's the even or the odd years.
And then are you expected to just kind of keep up with everything in between, but you don't congregate together in Salem except for those?
I do believe that, I don't think it's required, but I do think it's encouraged to keep at least a couple days of office hours when they're not in session, just so that constituents...
Availability.
Yeah, exactly.
And I want to add, folks, and hopefully you'll back me up on this, we're in our genes and whatnot, and there's a reason for that. We essentially live in the countryside, which is to say, in modernity, in the mid-Willamette Valley, there's just less concrete and asphalt than there is in your average significantly large city.
Yes.
And you might say, well, John, okay, so what's the matter with you? You can't walk in a little bit of mud or something. It isn't just about that. For example, the last month, fall is upon us and was coming upon us this last month. I live alone in a historically significantly old farmhouse.
Oh, wow.
Probably, I'm guessing it's at least 140 years old.
Oh, wow, that's amazing.
Built in the 1880s. I've been refixing it and refurbishing for 10 years or so. But I have a number of chores I have to do in the fall. I got to get all my fruit in. I just harvested 40 gallons of grapes, which is 8 5-gallon buckets of grapes. Broke my Asian pear tree because I was malfeasant and didn't do my yard work adequately because I was focused on this and the Oktoberfest. So I've been cleaning up fruit, drying fruit, freezing fruit, squeezing. Last week, first time ever, stomped on the grapes.
Walla Walla used to have a public grape stomp.
To make grape juice, because I'm not a big wine drinker, but I'm a big fruit juice drinker. And I hate the fact that at the Panacea supermarket that we have now, the last 100 years or so, less than 100 years, the supermarket's only been around for about 80 years. Yeah. Really. I get so tired of buying the big plastic jugs of my cran raspberry or the little frozen things with the two, but I recycle it all. But now I'm making my own juice because I got 40 gallons of grape. But the fact of the matter is, when you live in a rural setting, which is essentially the district that Karyssa's going to represent is a bunch of small towns, none of which, does it include Woodburn?
I have some Woodburn addresses, but it's more like people that probably consider themselves Hubbard residents.
So the average constituency in the towns that you represent, which are, there's a bunch of them, are maybe 350 to about 12,000 people.
Yep.
I mean, that's what Malala and Silverton, Mount Angel's 3,500. Do you go down to Staten?
No, I don't have any Staten. I have a few sublimity addresses, but
And
no.
so a little, and you said Aurora.
Yep.
Up into Canby at all?
I have a few. There's a few Canby,
Isn't
but
that funny? They just have to shave them
Yeah.
off to get that number the way that is.
and the same with Canby. They probably consider themselves more Aurora residents, but still with
The
a
ones on
Canby.
the south side,
Yeah,
et cetera, and maybe
exactly.
the west side. So very interesting. And the fact of the matter is, my house is heated with wood.
Oh wow.
And so I have all of this, and I've got pastures and horse properties surrounding me. I've got vehicles, I got firewood. I've been getting my firewood in for the last 2 weeks. Chainsaws, you know, sawdust, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I've often thought that it's been under-discussed that these chasm-sized divides that have occurred and presented themselves most significantly in the last 5 to 9, 8 years, whatever it's been, is in large part induced and perpetuated by other natural divides, namely born out of the urban and the rural.
I could agree.
And I have lived in both. I've lived downtown LA, I've lived downtown Portland, I've lived in Malino for 10 years on acreage with my ex-wife. I've lived in Markham now for over 10 years in, you know, my old house and this and that. And now I also stay here in the apartment occasionally, which puts me downtown Mount Angel and all the exciting nightlife that may occasionally go on at the 210 East Pub or Loose Kitchen or Tiny's or El Corporal or the Sausage Meat Factory. I'm sure I'm leaving somebody out. The Monk's got a brewery up on the hill too. But it's actually a very fun place to visit, folks. And if you do, I encourage you to visit the whole place because it's that small. It makes it very, very easy. But Karyssa's representing a bunch of little towns like this in what is the more populated part of Oregon in the I-5 corridor, but it's still a unique reality because when the power goes out or when the fires come, were you here for the fires? You were? When the sky turned black and orange?
We evacuated down to Albany, which
wasn't that much better.
but they were far. It was far enough away
You
that
felt
we weren't
safer.
in a level 2 evacuation.
And
Yeah,
more solid concrete and asphalt.
yeah. My
so
mom lives down there.
it's a little bit more of a place where you fight. So that's why I'm supporting and being a proponent of this casual and authentic and integrous conversation in this humble little space, because I want to be a bit of a bridge between everybody, and that's the only worthy work, if you ask me, moving forward in the rest of my life. Is that kind of your perspective on how you will want to represent folks here in the 18th district?
Yeah. And I mean, I grew up, Walla Walla is bigger. I think it's like 60,000. Don't quote me on that. I haven't looked in a while.
I think you're right, though.
But still considered a rural community. It's not connected.
Absolutely.
It's
disconnected
exactly.
from a lot.
It is a little island of its own.
Right.
And I've only ever, the biggest, I think Walla Walla, I lived in Kaiser for 6 years, which I think is smaller than Walla Walla. So Walla Walla is the biggest place I've ever lived. So I've always lived in a rural area. And I think it's really important that people start to realize that there are true rural Democrats that truly do want to do what is best for the people in their district. And it's not just Republicans that live rurally. And I think that running and doing stuff like this gives the other people that agree and feel like I do the ability to be a little bit more vocal in their communities, because they realize they're not the only ones.
Well, I gotta give you another one for vocal. That was for vocal, folks, because everybody who knows me knows how much I can be vocal. So, well, that's really fun. And so, can I just pretend to be a real news person or something, and kind of just fire a few what I think might be relevant questions? So, I assume you're in support of everyone's rights, women's rights, the right to choice.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a daughter. I have reproductive disorder issues. So being able to access any kind of reproductive care in any fashion or anything is incredibly important.
In the LGBT trans community,
yep,
you're an open-minded individual because you understand that Mother Nature has created diversity in all of her animal forms and life forms, I should say.
Right. And I truly don't think it's anybody. Just stay out of people's houses, stay out of their doctor's offices, because if it doesn't affect you.
Do you know what Stu's most essential platform was?
I don't. I wish I did, but tell me.
And I may not be quoting this perfectly, forgive me everybody, but he was fiscally conservative and socially liberal, thereby at least half of that is what you just stated you are. And so I'm so happy to meet you today and know that you're running and representing that position, and so would he. And you got to understand something. I kind of feel like I'm in a little bit of partnership with him and Roger, even though they're both gone, because they both made this impossible, almost impossible, for me to say no thank you. So that's why I'm doing this.
Yeah.
And I do it with a real sense of mission and heart. And the fiscally conservative part, I mean, I didn't go out to see what you drove up in.
I drive a 10-year-old 2014 Mazda CX-5 that my mom gave me a year and a half ago.
How's it doing?
It's fine.
Okay. Your husband helps you take care of it?
And he drives a 2019 Chrysler. So, I mean, we're not, we don't even own a house. Yeah. We are renters in Silverton.
But in terms of the resources of the government and the state and everything else, what would you say maybe your top 5 priorities might be?
My number one priority would be fully funding our schools. Silverton.
Oh my heavens.
You're a teacher.
Yeah.
Silverton, we didn't pass our bond a year and a half ago, and the middle school's partially condemned. Just before the bond failed, we had a skylight fall out of a ceiling in a first grader classroom. And Oregon used to rank up near the top in education in the country, and then there were some measures that were passed in the 90s, and so schools are funded differently now, and despite the fact that we are still top 6, I think, in the country tax-wise, we are ranking down 44th in education. It's a travesty. Our kids and our teachers deserve so much better.
It's a travesty. Do you have any thoughts on how that funding, or where that funding, or the structure of how that, anything? Have you talked to anybody, talking to people about that?
Yeah, I do have some thoughts on it. And the school's funding comes from the state legislature.
In terms of the mandate, but it comes from local.
Yes, but the legislature is where who distributes the money. It comes from the general fund.
Okay.
And there's been some measures that have been implemented in the last few years that have supposed to go on to schools, and like the CAT tax, the corporate activity tax that was implemented, it generated, I think, $115 million for schools. But then what happened was the state legislature, instead of adding that to the school fund, they just took $115 million away from what the general fund was going to put towards schools. So it was a wash, and I don't think that was the right move. But I do think that we need to reevaluate some of the tax code in Oregon, because out of 43 states with an income tax, one state has the kicker rebate like we do. And I do think that when the top 1% wealthiest Oregonians are getting an average of $45,000 a year, and the top 100 wealthiest Oregonians are getting almost $1 million in kicker refunds back, while their schools are quite literally falling apart. That there needs to be some reassessment there.
Boy, I would agree with that. How much aware are you of how the whole education system works in Oregon, from the ODE to the TSPC to what I consider the little fiefdoms that are every school district?
I don't know too much,
Well,
but
we'll have to talk
yeah,
more
I would
about
love to
that
know
later.
more about it.
It's a pet project, some peeve of mine.
Yeah.
No pun intended with that peeve, but
And then I'm also in Silverton. I'm on the Affordable Housing Task Force, and I have been for a couple of years now. And we've got some really great projects in the works. So making sure that there's affordable housing in Oregon. I mean, like I said, I don't own a home, and I don't know that there is a path to home ownership for my husband and I in the near future with the prices in Oregon. And so affordable housing is another really big value for what I want to work on.
have you connected with the folks in Silverton who are feeding people, and the ones at the what is the nonprofit that houses people?
Sheltering Silverton. Yeah,
Have you met all those people?
yeah.
Okay.
Sarah White and I were
Okay.
friends for quite a while. And then at SACA, that's the food bank.
Correct. Thank you.
I volunteered there for like a year and a half. It was prior to COVID. Since COVID happened, things have been different, and my daughter's gotten older, so I don't have quite as much time. But I volunteered in the shopping part, and then also for I think 6 or 8 months, once a month, I would bring all of my haircutting stuff out over to SACA.
Oh, nice.
Because that was before I had a salon in Silverton. I had a salon in Salem, so I brought everything with me, and I
Gave
did
free
free
haircuts.
haircuts
Nice.
when they were closed to the public.
Very good. Okay, so and I wanted to back up 1 second though, if I may. The education thing, part of and this is just me just sharing a little
Yeah.
bit of things that I've just thought about and discovered a lot because of all of the amount of work I've done in education now the last couple of years. It's a conundrum because Oregon is one of the physically largest states. I don't know what number it is, but it's in the top 10, size-wise. Our population, there's 10 Californians for every Oregonian. There's roughly 40 million Californians, and there's roughly 4 to 4.5 million Oregonians.
I was just watching something yesterday, and I didn't realize until yesterday that New York City proper has twice as many residents as Oregon does for the whole state.
And so does LA County, 3 times as many people.
I had no idea.
Now, Washington State, your homeland, has just over double what Oregon has. I
Yeah.
think about 9 million. Of course, they got Boeing. Take that however you will. And Seattle, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, all that beautiful ocean and everything. So that makes it difficult, and particularly through the historic lens, because you can imagine 100 years ago, if somebody was driving around a Model T, or maybe still a buggy with a horse or two. Wow, that means Mount Angel was really far away. That means Burns and Baker City and John Day were really far away.
I mean, they still are. I don't like being in the car for 8 or 9 hours.
Okay, so I'm just saying that I respect the fact that the landscape that is Oregon education is a very diverse, unique problem, or set of different environmental circumstances. But this is modernity. And we should be able to get down on the ground and pull our knees up and our sleeves up or whatever and apply a lot of modern thinking and education and academic research with a lot of presumably relatively modern technology, and we should be special again. By the way, when I was growing up in Southern California in the 60s and the 70s, Oregon was very well known for a couple of things. Guess what the number one thing was? Recycling. What happened to that? We don't know. So I'm not asking you to answer that. A lot of us know kind of what's happened to that, and then, But like, why? Why hasn't it been managed as a priority? For example, it kills me when I go to schools. I usually try to be healthy and have this salad bar, even despite the most plethora of ranch dressing, for my lunch. And none of these rural schools are composting. And I'm a master composter. I believe heavily and highly in composting. And I just think of what a horribly lost lesson that we're not, and some of them say, oh, we used to, you know, somebody spearheaded it, this, that, or the other. So it really does require that, you know, getting down and dirty kind of orientation sometimes to make, I think, the special things happen. And that's all we need now, are special things. We got the grocery store working okay, the Five's still functional, you know. So anyways, just 2 cents for our overall group consciousness as we all think about all of these things moving forward. So you've given me 2.
Yeah. Also, obviously, most of our area is rural with lots of farmlands and forest lands. And so making sure that we're being conscious and protecting those, because that kind of leads into climate change, which is another thing. Because, I mean, when we had the fires, we already talked about that. I had to evacuate. And then 6 months later, we had a historic ice storm that hit Silverton like a ton of bricks. Yes. We had a giant branch. We had a big oak tree in our front yard. And it came through the living room ceiling. Luckily, nothing was majorly damaged. But it also totaled my husband's truck because it wasn't running at the time, so we couldn't move it. We had to spend a couple nights at the Garden Hotel. And then my husband and I actually, we ended up taking a week off of work, and we started out grilling hot dogs and hamburgers out in front of my salon. And then we moved it to a local church because I was like, I think somebody's going to get in an accident. There's no power, so you can't see. It's dark out. Like, we need to move this somewhere safe. But we had several families that came every day for lunch and dinner because they couldn't afford to go out to eat every single meal.
Well, plus wasn't the power out for a while? My power in Markham was out for like both of those events. I think one was 10 days and one was over 2 weeks.
Yeah. Luckily we found Oak Street Church was kind enough to donate their kitchen because they had power, so we were able to use the kitchen there.
Sweet. So, and just broadly, I'm going to take this opportunity. And Oregon has historically been known for this thing called the urban growth boundary, and we found out that we both are connected with Jim Gilbert and Joe Wilson, who produced the film An Oregon Story, which recently premiered and played here during the Oktoberfest 4 days in a row, and is available on their website, anoregonstory.com, and it supports all of these concepts generically.
It also does a really good job highlighting how well both sides of the political spectrum worked together 50 years ago, instead of siloing themselves in each party.
And you might add that that would be important to you if at all possible.
If at all possible, yes. And while I don't do super great in front of groups or like speaking publicly, one of the things that I really excel at is forming relationships one-on-one because of my job. That's what I do all day long. That's what I've done for 10 years now. And I think that's really super important, is to make sure that you're forming relationships with everybody at the table, because the only way to get anything done is to have those connections.
Can I give you a little bit of advice?
Sure.
Or not advice, but just insight. You keep saying you're not that great of a this or great. That's going to shift like that as you learn it. You're doing that now. We're doing that together now. We should be, and we were designed to be, lifelong learners, because in the old days we didn't have a supermarket.
Right.
So you had to have a lot of ingenuity to just survive. So the fact is, I find you very communicative, and I understand now where that comes from. And as long as you're an observant person using your 5 senses and all of our vast brain power, and learning on the job, I think the other thing that becomes important is just your being in touch with your passionate feelings about care and concern.
And I think it's really important that regular people like me are the ones that are running and having those positions in government, because when you are in a position of power and you're completely removed from the community, you don't actually know what's happening on the ground level and what the everyday struggles are. And so, yeah, I might not have a super advanced degree or any experience with public policy, but I learned really quickly. I've been working since I was 12 years old. I started out cleaning stalls, moved on to working at the high school. And that's another thing is when I say I'm a true rural Democrat, I grew up riding horses in 4-H. In the summer, starting at 12, I cleaned stalls.
You learned so much.
In exchange for riding lessons. Yes, we exist. And being in the public eye and making it accessible to other people to know that there's those of us that do exist makes it more accessible to everybody.
The thing you said about the people who end up removed from reality because of their money and their insulation,
Yep.
and maybe their technology, or their this or their that or whatever. Again, I'm just going to share a couple little things. In the last year, I've come up with this concept that what's killing the planet, and what I mean by that, folks, is the planet's going to survive a lot longer than we are.
What's killing us?
What's killing all of the current life forms that we all inherited on the planet is our narcissism, directed by our comfort, convenience, and cash, otherwise known as the commercial capitalism that we've rendered the last 100 years in an accelerated time in history with the advent of the first industrial revolution and then now this digital revolution. And when I see 1-year-olds in the supermarket or 7-year-olds in school or 14-year-olds in school going to this out of habit and fulfillment, that is to say, entertainment, it irks me to no end.
Instant gratification.
Because this is a very small field of view. It's a flat, two-dimensional reality. And we're only using and wearing out our two thumbs, our eyes,
on the back of our necks.
the backs of our necks, maybe our ears. But we are not doing what we've been designed to do when we're doing this. We've been designed to be a robust, viable, complex feedback system with 5 senses that we know of. There might be 1 or 2 others. And tremendous, sight and smell and hearing and all this. And then this very large human brain, which I believe was created with the feedback loop with the 5 senses in Mother Nature. And I think we could back that up with a lot of data and research. I watch a lot of PBS, and among other things. And so the fact that we're putting in the hands of our children something that takes them away from what every other generation for tens and hundreds of thousands of years of human beings and humanoids had. Not this, but this,
It also, the isolation
drives me crazy. Oh, yeah. Oh,
that it causes.
Yeah.
And it's much
so
easier.
You just got my vote 100 to 1,000%.
It's a lot easier to be mean and nasty to people when it's on the other side of a screen because you don't know that person. But when you're sitting with somebody like this or in a group full of people, it is a lot harder to have that vitriol and that hatred. And we're social animals. Like, we weren't meant to be isolated in our little silos, our little groups. It's not normal.
In 2 dimensions.
Yeah.
Because when we're really all at home by ourselves, we're just in 2 dimensions in that field. I so appreciate and respect the way you put all of that. And when I'm teaching students of a certain age anyways, I'll often say, particularly if I'm frustrated, I'll say, this is just a tool, like a hammer. What do you do when you need to drive a nail? You grab your hammer. So if you need to, text your grandma, we're gonna be late, or your girlfriend, I'm on my way, or whatever it might be, you use, but that's a communications tool at that point, but not the thing that it has become. So it's scary. So I'm glad you have a lot of sensibility about all of that, because my God, as I said, K through 12, you know, that's a discussion now in districts and in the state, you know,
Silverton
about taking them in or out of the schools, or not allowing them, putting them in little pockets or whatever. I'm just like,
the middle school in Silverton doesn't allow them to be on their person, and the high school just switched to that. And I know there's a lot of strong feelings regarding it, because, I mean,
it's a practical dimension.
Exactly. With
the
all
tool
of
part,
the scary things that happen in schools nowadays. But as a parent of a middle schooler, as long as she is able to access it in case of an emergency, that's all she needs. It in her backpack,
or at the end of the school day.
At the end of the school day. So I understand both sides of the argument that they want them completely gone, or completely accessible, but I do think that there's got to be a middle ground for everything.
Well, I absolutely agree with that, because I've been a parent, I've been, you know, a teacher, I've been a guy who lives an hour away from PDX and picks people up at the airport periodically, or flying in from hours away. I mean, the communication part of the tool is a vitally cool and relevant thing. That being said, I would like to add that I grew up in the era of the 20th century, where all we had was a wire attached to a thing that went like this, and then the wire went into the wall.
I mean, when I was a kid, we had the big box style computer with dial-up internet in the living room.
And the brick.
And the brick. And I didn't have a cell phone until I think I was 15, and it was a basic flip phone.
You were the transitional generation.
Yep, I am.
And I was a transitional generation, but it was transitional once I was already an adult. Mm-hmm. So I can represent the fact that we can survive.
Yep.
I'm a fossil. We can't survive without these.
I will say my business would be really hard if I didn't have my phone.
Well,
that's the tool part.
Yep. And we wouldn't be doing this if it weren't for the phone.
Exactly.
So we understand the complexities, and that's what it is. We have created a very complicated society with all of this technology and populations and diverse ways and places and choices to live, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Were there any other things that were top on your agenda list that are near and dear to you? We covered 3 that were very vital and relevant to me, particularly, that I respect a lot.
Oh, I didn't specifically say, but reproductive health, because Oregon, we do have abortion access enshrined into our Constitution, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's safe. We know at the national level that despite what's being said...
Well, you could end up in one of these positions again where nationally it's illegal, but the state says it's legal. Now you got that conflict.
Exactly.
What a nightmare that would be.
A national ban would be detrimental to every woman or person of childbearing status in this country. And so we need to make sure that even at the state legislature level that we have people that are going to support that access and fight for that access in the terrible off chance, rose-colored glasses here, but terrible chance
Let's not
that...
even talk.
Right.
I know what you're talking about. We're gonna let that go. But that's right. And I agree with you. I'm trying to imagine and visualize that it's a very unlikely chance.
Right. And it's not just access to abortion, it's access to IVF. I've got dear friends that the only way that they were able to conceive healthy children was through IVF. And I don't think that if that's the route that you have to go to grow your family, then I think that you should be able to do that.
Here's another hot topic related to that. How do you feel about book banning?
I think that we should all read the books that are banned.
Good. Oh, that was a good answer. That was very smart.
I'm a big reader.
An entertaining answer, I might add.
I'm a big reader. I think I've read upwards of 70 or 80 books this year so far. Mostly fantasy, romance.
Wow.
Big book talk girly.
That means you're exercising your elastic synapses, and that's what's important. And I might add that the advent of anything remotely like book banning sounds like Nazi Germany to me, and the only people that totally insane.
Yeah, the only people that are ever on the that side of book banning, or the people we don't want to follow in their footsteps.
And, you know, and I'm going to make a little pitch at that point as well, for the fact that if anybody's banning a book from anybody, it should be a responsible parent managing the available content for the age-appropriate developing child.
Yep.
And I don't know, I'm going to throw something else at you here and see how you respond to it. And tell me what you think viscerally from your gut when I say this. And this is another one of these things I've come up with myself over a very vast, long life and a lot of diverse experience that I've had in my life. I'm just going to put it to you that way. People who know me know what I'm talking about. People who don't, they can imagine the best and the worst. That's up to them. But having been a son of a manic depressive in the 70s, having been a father, having been a late blooming gay divorced father, having always imagined myself as a mindful, thoughtful, considerate, relatively sensible and sensitive person, I decided sometime in the last 5 or 10 years, from my perspective, that until this country figures out how to and understands why it's so important that we take more than adequate care of every little baby's brain, I think we're all just portraying a ruse on each other. Because unless every kid of this country is maximized, then all of the hoopla and all of the fun talk and all of the dramatic conflict and all of the melodrama on soaps and commercialism and advertising, everything else, it's all a ruse. The only thing that really matters is how we care for each other.
Yep.
And that starts with every baby and every baby's brain. And something happened, I think, in this country over the last maybe its whole life, that allowed us to just slowly separate from being caregiving and care-oriented towards our neighbors, towards our brothers and our sisters and everyone. And I think some of that has to do with natural responses and inclinations to living in very crowded areas like big cities. Because then you don't really, I've noticed this is my own little research project, having lived crowded in cities. You know, you kind of maybe do put up these barriers that want to get yourself into your own apartment without engaging, because you've been busy with people all day long, you know, and you're surrounded by people everywhere. Whereas in the country, little townette, historical townette, like my little townette of Markham, which you recognize Markham is a Mount Angel address, by the way. You know, we got 12 houses, a restaurant, and a church.
Very good restaurant, by the way.
And if something happens like that fire or that ice storm, or God forbid, you know, a lunar eclipse and masses of traffic that have never been seen anywhere in the territory before, you are naturally, opposite happens. You're naturally drawn to your neighbors because you don't have that many. So this is it's a really near and dear subject to me because of the way I've led my life, kind of living in the cities and living in the country at various points in time, and in an engaged way every time. And so I think that that's something that we should all be that more mindful about moving forward with the advent of all of this communication. I mean, I'm trying to use the technology to be a bridge in that environment right there.
And I think that a lot of that stems from decades of the instilling of rugged American individualism. And I think that, you know, that will eventually lead to a downfall, because if you don't have community and something happens, what are you going to do? Mutual aid, I know, has become a big talking point in a lot of circles in the last 5 or 10 years, maybe even longer. But I learning how to work together and form those relationships with your neighbors, regardless of what they look like, who they're married to, what their family looks like, anything like that. I think that's the route that we need to start taking, and realize that rugged individualism is maybe not the best tactic, because we've been trying it for a while now, and it doesn't seem to be working.
That's a very interesting commentary that I have to say one or two things about, and I'll try to keep it short. I don't think there's anything wrong with rugged individualism, unless you are living as a hermit in isolation with a lot of anger and disconnectedness. It doesn't mean, by definition, rugged individualism, that you're not connected to community. In fact, I would submit that historically, where that term originally came from was the Wild West, and that those people historically were absolutely codependent on their community.
They were, but I think we've gotten away from that.
Absolutely, absolutely. So
I think the definition maybe has changed.
Correct. That's what I was trying to get to. I wanted to clarify some of that, because conversely, in places like Portland or Los Angeles, all of these concepts have different meaning all the way around.
Yes.
You know, so you know, the ability to take care of yourself, to pull yourself up by your bootstraps, to survive when needed, to call on your own powers of reason and ingenuity, to manifest mental and physical health, is an incredibly good thing for all of us to nurture and have. At the same time, we live in a modern world that now has over 8 billion people. There were half as many people on the planet when I was born, 4 billion people about. And so I agree. We need to be mindful individualists if we're going to be individualists. And I kind of feel like I am a little bit of a rugged individualist because, you know, I squeeze my grapes and I do all these things. But I'm also highly connected to so many different communities, in fact. And so I'm vouching for both of those things. And I would submit that you're being a rugged individualist because you're doing something in an area, you know, that not anybody else chose to do, apparently.
This is true.
You know, so it's always a fine, as you said a little bit earlier, a fine compromise, or a unique middle zone compromise. So we discussed, are you familiar with the term radical inclusion?
A little bit. I'm not super educated on it.
Well, it means exactly what it says,
right?
Which is equal rights for everybody, and, you know, kindness for everybody. And if you take it to my nth degree, where I believe every baby should be the priority, and everybody,
they're future leaders,
should be the priority of this whole country, you know, then that would be the maximum radical inclusion you could have. So that's a good term that I learned in the last 15 years or so and really liked.
And I think that children are probably one of the biggest disenfranchised groups of humans in our country, maybe in the world, because for 18 years they're under their parents. And so I think we need to be extra mindful when we are talking about our kids.
Wow, now you're talking about another one of my favorite subjects, which is human development, which, you know, occurs the most between 0 and 5, and a little bit more on up into maybe they say the guy's brains don't fully mature until now. I think the most recent research is saying 25.
25, yeah, that's when I think it's, and I think it's just humans in general. Our prefrontal cortex is not fully developed until 25 or 26.
I think you're right, and that's what they're determining. Oh, I'm so glad you said all that, because I'm big into all the contemporary research. We have all these institutions, you know, that have all the money in the world, Harvard, Stanford, and all of their researchers doing a lot of incredible work. When I was growing up on Sunday nights, when we only had 3 or 4 TV stations back in the dark ages, you would have the wonderful world of Disney. And Walt Disney himself would walk into his office and sit down on the edge of his desk to introduce the episode that they had produced that night. But for the half an hour before that show, you had something called Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom. And that's was representative of the earliest technology of us and scientists photographing Mother Nature.
Okay.
Something very near and dear to me. Hi, Chaya. She's from Mother Nature. All the jazz musicians are from Mother Nature. The yogis are from Mother Nature. And anyways, we've been studying Mother Nature for intently now for decades and decades with very, more and more high technology. And we're really learning so much more. And it would be so nice if we could get everybody on the same page of understanding.
It would be very nice.
A lot of what we've learned, don't you think? So, well, this has been really, 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 really wonderful. Let's do a little check-in, see how many people. First of all, we're going to see what time it is. Because I could do this probably for hours, and I know that most people won't watch for hours, so I don't want to overdo that. It says we still have one. Doesn't tell me here. Let me turn my volume off, and I'm going to click on it and see if it'll tell me how long we've been going. Because I don't have a back office or any other support. No, on this rendition live on the, 1 hour, started 1 hour ago. Okay, it's been about an hour. And I'm getting pretty good at understanding when an hour, my internal clock is getting pretty good on this. Did you have fun?
Yeah.
Was it cool?
Yeah.
Casual?
Yeah.
And, well, I so appreciate you. If I have success, you're going to always be very special to the success of this podcast. And if you have success, I hope that the same could be said for me and my podcasting here in Mount Angel. Once again, I'm John Deschler, coming to you from the Mount Angel Theater Studio, sitting here with Karyssa Dow. Where is Dow? May I ask you? I'm just again. I'm a natural learner. I just always want to know what's the origins of is that your husband's name?
Yeah, it's my husband's name. I think it's like Scottish.
Okay.
His great grandparents were actually Italian immigrants that came through Ellis Island.
Well, then it might have been a Dow was short for Dow.
No, those were San Vitale. It was San Vitale, but
okay.
Dow came. I think came from like North Dakota, but I think originally from Scotland. He's done a little bit of genetic stuff.
The northern part of the European. That's like me. I'm a mutt, a European mutt myself. Well, really fun. John Deschler here with Karyssa Dow, who's running for the 18th representative district in the state of Oregon race coming up. When November 7th?
November 5th, and ballots actually will be sent out in the mail October 16th, so people should start getting them by like the 20th or the 21st.
Of October.
Of October, yep. So you can vote early.
And you can vote early. And we're going to do a meet and greet right here. When did we say?
October 9th from 5:30 to 7:30.
Okay, thank you very much at the Mount Angel Theater Studio at 220 East Charles. Happy to do it. Hope as many of you come as possibly can from around the district particularly.
Yep.
And is there anything else that you're doing that you would like to say in terms of scheduled events that you know you're part of? You're going to be canvassing?
Yes, I'm going to be canvassing on Sunday, this coming Sunday, the 29th, with Janelle Bynum's campaign in Mount Angel. And then first Friday, October 4th, I have a meet and greet at my salon, which is 304 North 1st Street in Silverton. And that's drop-in casual. Feel free to stop by. I just want to meet and talk to voters in the district.
That's Silverton's first Friday event.
Yep, at Silverton's first Friday event.
Do you know if they're going to have the car show that Friday?
I don't know. I don't know if they do that after summer. And I think since it's October.
Those guys don't want to get their cars wet.
But honestly, I don't know. I'm not part of the chamber in Silverton, so.
We'll see. Okay, that's all really good, and maybe you'll come back here. Maybe we'll do this again. Just we get better at it as we do it, I think, and I think that's what we have. You know, I like the realness that we're generating here. There's not all the gliss and plastique and rubber and Teflon.
I'm not great at being fake.
None of that is here. This is wood. This is canvas. I'm flesh. Your flesh. These are real jeans of some brand, of who knows what brand. And again, we appreciate you. Did you say you do have a website?
Yeah, it's Karyssa for Oregon, the number 4.com. And I also have TikTok and Instagram and Facebook.
And to help out, because I'm a slow learner sometimes, Karyssa number 4
And then
Oregon
fully spelled out.
.com is your website. Our website here at the Mount Angel Theater Studio is www.angeltheaterstudio.com. And I will not stand on my head until my ears are turning red. And that was an old advertising thing as I was growing up in L.A. Cal Worthington was a guy, he was a car salesman, and he was going to stand on his head till his ears were turning red until you buy his car.
Oh, okay.
So it's John Deschler, the Mount Angel Theater Studio, 220 East Charles. The theater is available for rentals, private movie watching parties, birthday parties. Bring in whatever you want. I can have as many as 100 in here at a time. We can do live music, movies, performances, open mics, whatever anybody wants to experiment with in the community, I am prepared to support, okay? I want to thank Karyssa for coming one last time. I know I'm repeating myself.
No, it's fine.
And,
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome, and I'm going to step over to the control booth at the side of the stage, and I actually should do that with my microphone, so that the people don't have a traumatic experience of loneliness as I walk away. Who knows which camera we're on? I'm going to watch it for a second and make sure. Well, it was working, and it was on the back camera, and now we've gone to the Abaquaw Falls, which I blend in for about 3 seconds. And now you're sitting there, and I'm going to go back to my logo when I put my glasses on. Thanks again, everybody. Please subscribe, stay aware of what's going on here, and give me a thumbs up, if not a comment. Thank you so much, everybody. Appreciate your participation now and later. Bye-bye.